So our guest is the, let me get the full title, Deputy Spokesperson.
Presidential spokesperson.
Deputy Presidential Spokesperson. So your boss is a minister, but you're not a minister.
I'm not.
Okay. So you work from the presidency.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So what do you do? What's your job?
Oh, Bernard.
We just want to understand it too. So you talk for the government.
So all comms, yes.
All communication.
Yes, all comms.
So as in radio, TV, all the mediums.
Internal.
Okay, internal too.
Communications, yes. So it's our primary duty to keep everybody within the presidency updated on what's happening in government, and also relating to the various ministries, department, agencies, and bringing back the relevant information to the presidency. I mean, it's a presidency that seems to want to be hands-on, and the structure that is being evolved would speak to that. A very involved presidency that wants to know what is happening everywhere. And so that seems to be the structure.
So there's no information ministry, but essentially your boss is functioning like an information minister.
You could say so. You could say so. We had a DEBA at the Ministry of Information, the former defunct Ministry of Information, because we had to speak with the staff of the Information Ministry and the Information Services Department. They turn 88 years next year. In fact, they are one of the longest institutions. Yes, they turn 88 years next year, so they will be commemorating that. So yes, the staff of the defunct Information Ministry will be absorbed into, they will be seconded to other institutions, but the ISD remains, because the ISD is going to be a core part of the new structure of government communication, strengthening them with the requisite, facilities, and they do have quite great human resource. I mean, and what you're doing currently can be scaled up and ensure that there is really very quick, responsive institution that is disseminating government information across board. So yes, Felix remains the Minister for Government Communication, and that structure would work with the Information Services Department to deploy information across the country.
I think the NDC has never really liked the information ministry on its own. It's always preferred the communication umbrella.
Yes.
And I think the president himself at some point was a communication minister.
Indeed.
Who at some point was also almost like information minister in a sense. So the ISD and the people, they are okay. They are not. They don't feel like their jobs have been taken from them.
No, they are very much okay. I mean, we are working with them to roll out all these activities that are coming up. They are all part of it. They are part of all meetings.
But how's your transition been? Because I've known that you did campus politics.
Yep.
A lot of people with the campus politics are full politicians. But for many years, you were in media, and then you moved into activism.
Yep.
So media activism, civil activism. So when did you decide that, Charlie, now I have to throw my hat into the full political ring?
It's been a long time coming. You know that the interest has always been there.
Yeah.
But I guess the time wasn't right as yet. For a woman, I think there are a lot of choices you need to make in life. And for me, I was quite grounded in what were my priorities. And I needed to do the needful before I release myself.
Yes, I get it. Yeah.
To do the wants.
So you needed to fulfill the family side, build a family,
to do that.
and then stabilize. Yes. So even when you were here, you were interested in politics.
Oh, I was, Bernard. Didn't you? I think that was one of the most common questions I used to get from colleagues back in school. Say, aren't you going to do this thing?
Yeah.
I said, the calling hasn't come yet. Let the calling come. Yeah. Everything would work out in the right time. And I think that I have no regrets.
I remember when we were on campus, one of my vivid memories, you did a march on something, and then I'm not going. I'm and there was a lot of backlash.
It was.
So I was a journalist. So I was a broadcaster, and then Shamima had run for Volta Hall president.
Okay.
And then she had led a walk against indecent dressing, and it was caricatured to mean that. And this was around 2001. So this was a time when there was a big debate around Osama bin Laden and terrorism and all of that. So I even had a debate with John Kuma and Mutala on this topic with a guy called Tanko. So the politics of the time painted Shamima as an Islamic fundamentalist, and the students voted against her. And so we had to even interview her about why she did the march.
Wow. But you know that the real facts of that story.
Give me.
So that time I was the deputy women's commissioner.
Yes.
With the commissioner was Gladys Jansi.
Good.
Now, the lady who won the election, Selina, was a member of the University Christian Fellowship.
Okay.
University Christian Fellowship brings a proposal to SRC Women's Commission.
Oh my God.
That they want to collaborate with SRC Women's Commission to embark on an anti-indecent, dressing
so this is the
match.
Backstory.
This is the real backstory.
I didn't know.
Because I was at Radio Universe, I was tasked to manage the publicity for the event.
Okay.
So it was I who was in charge of the publicity for this event. Mind you, Bernard, I didn't even participate in this match. I was at the SRC Union building waiting for them to come back to the press conference. I was coordinating the press conference for them. I didn't read the speech. It was read by my SRC Women's Commission, flanked by executives of the University Christian Fellowship. But I was the foreperson. And because later on in Volta, as I was going on, but you went to organize this match. And the lady who won, so that's why sometimes you feel that it's really not about that, because the lady who won that election was actually an executive of the Christian Fellowship.
Clearly, there
from
was
where the idea generated.
It's okay, let's not open the I wanted to bring that question to say more like baptism into leadership, understanding that you can be misconstrued, you will suffer for positions you take, and that you can suffer and eventually still succeed. I mean, that's for me, that the thing. It's not even about pointing, because as a journalist watching that, I was like, how did this become about Shamima?
Yes.
Of course, I cannot say I support you. I'm interviewing you, so I just follow the sentiment. But that was your baptism of fire.
It was a baptism of fire. And yes, my billboards, my flyers had drawings. So in some flyer they drew a beard around my face.
The Vandals.
And then wrote
The
Osama
Vandals.
bin Shamima.
I don't know what you're talking. We don't know what you're talking about.
And I'll say something. At the time, I remember, because she did this afro hair. She hadn't put chemicals, so they would go and draw and put a turban on the head and say Osama bin Shamima. Okay, so she lost the election, but you still were involved in activism.
I became the local NUX president the following year with I forget the name of that president, and so
you did good. So, but how were you accepted in NDC? Because you've been on air, you've interviewed hard interviews, and we've been on air, we've dealt drastically with both NDC and NPP. So when you warmed up into NDC and you started appearing on platforms, did you feel some internal,
there will always be
media people? You've done all your things. Now you are here to say, how did you? What happened?
There would always be, but I think it's the people who are on your side that matters. And for me, I was very grounded with the people who were on my side, and they were quite significant, and the roots were deep. And so I think that those internal whisperings didn't, to a large extent, affect my own personal commitment to the cause.
But did your media background help in the way you were accepted and how you've risen pretty fast?
Tremendously. I would say that the media background gave me some level of social capital, and also because of all the work that I've done. I think anybody who is a keen follower of my trajectory knows that even in the media, I did a fair job. And I always say that there will always be more questions for a government in power than there will be for an opposition. That is the natural course of affairs. And to the extent that I was behind the mic at the time that the NDC was in power, it means that they would feel the brand. They did chop fire, and rightly so. So today, when I come up and I speak that, having experienced both the NDC and NPP in power and in opposition, I am of the considered opinion of the issues that we held them accountable. The NDC is a better representation of the people than the New Patriotic Party. And I've come to that decision based on that experience. I mean, we are here, you are on air, you will receive text messages. So if we're talking about people who are actually, they are more open to criticism, I think more tolerant to criticism. I
heard you on a rally in Tamale say that it was okay, in not as many ways, but you're basically saying that President Mahama is also one of the reasons.
Yes.
You sort of you beyond NDC, you said Mahama is more tolerant, has a better plan. Did he play any role in your integration to NDC? And what is it about him that made you believe that this was a time to come out openly into politics?
If not now, then when, actually. So I think that it was a potpourri of reasons that all just cooked at the right time to make the decision very easy. Like I referenced earlier, I was ready for it. The candidate was a great candidate. The vehicle was a vehicle that philosophically I aligned to. You know, at a very intrinsic level, given my own, you know, background and family and all of that. So I think it was just the right time, and the stars aligned at the right time, and it was very easy.
But how different is Mahama now that you work with him from the Mahama we interviewed or saw from the back as journalists, probably from 2000 all the way through? I mean, when I was in Lagos, people said Mahama is a great MP. They liked him a lot. And then they were tipping him for running mate when they give it to Mumuni. Then in 2008, when he was named first, I had friends in NPP who said, Charlie, if they give Mahama, they will vote for NDC. So he had that crossover appeal. But then from 2012, he started having a lot of challenges. NPP dealt with him a lot, Doomsaw. And then he lost in 2016 quite ingloriously. So his stock had sort of fallen. And then 8 years later, he's back and he's won the whole election. So has he changed as a man? Is it the same Mahama? Just talk to us a bit about discovering more about him.
I think in terms of his persona, he's been quite consistent. My first experience with him, Bernard, was actually when I started Radio University. You know, I started Radio University level 100.
Yes.
My first external event to go and cover was at the Ministry of Communication. You know,
so this is 1999.
It was 99 because he was 99. Still deputy.
Yes.
You know, it 99. Must have been 2000 because they lost that 2000 election.
99, 2000.
Right. So when we went into that conference room, Spio Gabra was to address the media, and he asked that they should go and call John Mahama to come, his deputy. So he walked in, and my first impression as a young 19, 20-year-old was, oh, wow, this is a very calm-looking, politician. That was the first time I met him at the Ministry of Communication. As a student reporter,
sent by Alaji.
Is it not weird? Sent by Alaji.
With your brown paper.
And my foray into politics will be to actually work with him in a communication capacity.
25 years later.
I think we've come full
25
circle.
Years later.
Yes. And I think his persona has been quite consistent because I started following him when he used to come on media, platforms, speaking with the President Akufo-Addo. They were all pundits at the time. And I always used to admire his calm expression and dealing with issues with no emotive expressions or anger. I never witnessed him at a point of exasperation.
He doesn't show public anger.
Yes.
Hardly. Even
in his words, even when his words are biting, you wouldn't feel aggression from him. I don't know if you
I've noticed that Mahama has never. I've never seen him lose his temper in public.
It's very even tempered.
Very.
Is that a mask for? Because some people like that, they're
dangerous.
They are dangerous.
In what way?
Yeah, because
dangerous.
I've never seen him because I've watched interviews. There's this famous interview between David Ampofo and Mahama and Akufo-Addo. And Akufo-Addo has a lot of punches, but Mahama has this
calm demeanor.
Bring it on.
Yeah, so is it
I think
behind the scenes, if he gets you, finish you. So
no, I think that he's a leader who is he has his wits about him. It doesn't make him weak because when he needs to strike, I think he does. And everybody who works with him knows that you don't take his leniency as a weakness to do, as you please, because he will put you in your place if you deserve to be put in your place. So I think that a lot of things worked against him at the time that he came into power the first time. It was the second term of
the NDC,
and this 8-year cycle didn't work really for him, and the issues of the time again, and I keep on saying that no matter how much you justify your interventions, people will always assess your performance based on how it reflects in their pockets. The economy will always literally be translated to what I feel in my pocket, what I feel when I go to the market, what I feel when I go to access health and education. So ultimately, those indicators for decision making are justified for on the side of the people. So it was the situation at the time that didn't quite work for him, and he was almost at the end of a second term for the NDC, you know. But now, with the benefit of hindsight and of the same things that, you know, he was criticized for, and what we were offered by the New Patriotic Party, and what they were able to deliver, people see that character matters in leadership. You see, character matters, because in all of these things, you cannot point out that this person, as a person, was arrogant in the face of, you know, even those ills within his government, that this person was non-responsive to the Ghanaian, that this person was dismissive. Because if you look back at the old videos of interviews, there was always a concession of the difficulties, always a concession, never a parrying, you know,
so his style
was
not to sort of dismiss criticism,
been.
but
even
more
with the Doomso, listen to his interviews around the Doomso, always empathizing, always explaining, always trying to you know, to share information on what he was doing to solve the Doomso,
which was probably considered a weakness then, but now it's a strength.
It's a strength.
Were you surprised at the outcome of the election? I know NDC was energized, and therefore the turnout for NDC was going to be strong. But if you look at the manner of victory, almost the 2/3 of MPs are NDC, and Mahama almost 60%.
Yeah. He performed better in some areas than even the MPs.
Yeah,
in
I
many
mean,
areas.
Have you guys been shocked by the level of
I think
support and
we were.
I mean, like,
even we didn't anticipate the margin.
Yeah.
The grounds were fertile everywhere we went. We knew the wind of change was blowing. I mean, the stars were aligned for change. We knew that, but the margin, with all humility, we would say that was a bit of a shocker. But that's also a revelation to the evolving psyche of the Ghanaian. You can't take this is the same Ghanaians that voted us out by a 1 million margin, that also now voted, then which reduced to 500,000 cities, 500,000 votes for the Nana Baumia second term, and now 1.7 million. It means that
flipped.
Yes, it means if we also don't do right, who knows? It can even go to 3 million. May it never come to that.
Is there a sense of expectation? Because you know, there's a big margin to win. You gave a lot of promises, 120-day compact. Are you worried that with just one term and the level of expectation and the uncertainty about succession for both NDC and NPP, this is going to be a very difficult season for the government?
It will be difficult, but with transparency and accountability, we will carry the nation along. And I think that the examples that His Excellency has shown right from day one is building and restoring trust in his leadership and in government. The fact that he started the sacrifice by himself within his own camp, even before he would get to asking Labour, for example, to also make some sacrifices. He promised a lean and efficient government, and we've seen that it's a commitment that he has, upheld by reducing his ministers to 23, and of course he's insisted that we will run with 60 ministers. People have said that, how about the staffers at the presidency? What we can assure is that at the end of the day, when all the appointments are done, the numbers will go nowhere close to what we have. I heard you people, even at the government communication unit, I heard you a couple of days ago. I think it's a couple of years ago.
That video,
you mentioned, but it came back recently.
So that video was 2021 January, and it's been caricatured and misplayed. But we were talking about the previous government and the number of people in the communications unit
alone. And when you go to the Flagstaff House, there's even no space. So you wonder where people were sitting. So it seems people were just giving positions to then go and use to do whatever that they want, because there were no enough there are not enough seats and offices at that presidency to have accommodated all of these.
So, by the way, how many people
individuals.
work with your unit since that matter has come up between you and Felix? And
so far, we haven't even set a full unit up.
Oh,
we
really?
have about just 10 people working.
10 people?
10 people working now.
At the government
Yes,
communications?
yes,
10 people?
10 people. Me, Felix, a few researchers, because the structure is still being evolved. That is what we have so far. We don't anticipate to go above a certain small minimum. We don't.
There was some pressure on Mahama when he appointed some people. For example, GRA boss, they wanted him to remove the guy. There have been some angst around agitations for appointments. What is his mindset around some of those internal disquiets that some of his nominees engender? Like some of the people have been unhappy.
One, there is an acknowledgement of those sentiments. There will never be a disrespect to the sentiments, but there's also an openness in allowing people to express themselves and to also explain some of the reasons where it is required to be explained, but also a general appeal to trust the process. To trust the process. This is the person that you have entrusted the leadership of the party with. This is the person, he's the number one foot soldier. President John Mahama has done more work than anybody in this party consistently over the period. Because in an electioneering period, he will traverse more spaces than anyone. And when he goes to all of these spaces, he speaks. You said sometimes, yes, as part of the entourage, you will go to some of these places, but he speaks. He has to speak at multiple events in a day. So if there's anyone who has a real feel of what being a grassroots politician is, it must be the man who started as an assemblyman to a president. It must be him. So there's never a feeling of disconnection to the real sentiments on the ground. And if you just give him time, it's been just 50 days. If you give him time, in the fullness of that time, you would see what he intends to do. And the signs are already there. If you see the appointments that are coming, the youth that are getting positions, the young women that are going into various positions, there is a real commitment to act. But there's also a reality that you will not be privy to all the information that he has, that he needs to make decisions with. You as maybe an ordinary member of party, even us as officers, are not privy to everything.
To all the dynamics.
It is, you know, on a need-to-know basis. So you must trust this leader that Ghanaians have given this resounding mandate, that he himself will not do things that will cost his legacy. He has a 4-year legacy. He calls this his legacy mandate. So he will not deliberately do anything to cost him, you know, any distress.
Okay.
Without reason.
It's 8:42. We're talking to Shamima Muslim, who's the deputy presidential spokesperson. Myself, Godfred, and Caleb are here. I'm sure I have a few questions.
Yes, so I wanted to ask,
Godfred in ages.
Yes, because you've been busy. I wanted to ask, speaking about these youthful appointments and the mood of the man and the persona of the man, what is the message to these persons who have been appointed? Because there are those who have said that even in the early stages, some of what we have seen on social and other places is not reflective of the persona that you described. And so what does he tell?
Can you elaborate on that? Are you talking about like the guys who enter with supporters following them into the office, taking videos?
Yes, I just want to also understand the mindset of the president in when he talks to
these people
and sends them out.
But the way they are carrying themselves is like they are some
fulfill the 4-year legacy mandate
some
that
of them,
you're talking
it's
about.
like played them at iTop.
Thank you. I mean, for that. Yes, you're right. It's a 4-year mandate. There's an orientation that is being planned that will comprehensively bring, because people have had to take office almost immediately. You would see that they probably haven't apprised themselves. And you know there's going to be a code of conduct for public officers unveiled very soon. It's almost ready. It will be unveiled. And at the task force meeting that the members were tasked to quickly finish that code of conduct, it was very clear that this position is like a revolving door. Once the conduct becomes communicated and you are aware of what you're supposed to do and not to do, when you breach, you face the consequences. And I agree that there's a fine line we need to toe. You see, yesterday, there were a lot of people who massed up at the party headquarters.
Yes, looking for
demanding jobs. You see. So there is a certain energy that you need to allow to be dispensed to ease people's tensions. And so after the win, we had won an election by a massive margin. Some of these key individuals rallied mass support from youth. So when they got positions, there was this excitement around them. So when the people come around you, you cannot sack them. So you need to allow a certain avenue for expression, but you yourself need to quickly reset yourself and ensure that you don't proceed on that avenue. So I would assure you that some of those things that you saw were precious from a base that wanted to come out to show you love and support. Bernard, I assure it's not easy, but you don't want to also now come out and start sounding like, okay, now that you have won, you're saying that, oh, don't come around, don't call me, don't do this because I have to work.
You rode on our support to win.
Exactly.
So you have to balance that.
So you need to allow them that initial avenue to express whatever they want to express, but quickly we need to reset.
Maybe it's for you, the politicians, to also do more responsible politics. Because sometimes when you overpromise and you create a certain situation of expectation among your supporters, which is not real, this is what you sow. This is what you reap. So I don't know what you think about that.
But to be fair, I'm not sure about we're creating, but because every shift of power necessarily means that expanding opportunities and sharing those opportunities. Because this democracy, it's about shifting the power base. So once one power base exits, another power base does come, and it requires that members from within rightfully expect certain opportunities. So that is not a miscommunication of what comes with the win of power, but the management of those expectations must also be communicated in a way that you are not telling people that don't expect anything, because it is our duty to expand the opportunities and ensure that people, if you don't even get positions, but you are able to participate in the economy and you're able to, get dignified work and income or whatever it is that you want to do.
And again, building on that, how then do you and the president then, for that matter, if you can share some insights on that, how does he navigate that path also of, he won a massive mandate. The interpretation of that mandate in some quarters is the NDC won an election. But that mandate obviously could not have just been won by,
base.
So how then do you connect with that base that might not be significantly called loyalist sympathizers, but just voted based on what they felt at that moment, who sits back now and feel like, okay, it looks like we no longer matter?
For example, civil society. Civil society was very key in this election. Now the base wants to control what the government does, whilst there are people who are in the middle who supported NDC but prefer a certain style of government. That tension is basically what he's asking about.
Right. Civil society, I'm not sure.
A lot of civil society supported NDC. Yes. So my point is, they may not necessarily be as vibrant and aggressive in what they expect, like foot soldiers. So foot soldiers want you to do certain things.
If you look at the committees that we have set up, you would see a government that is showing indications of being open to expert voices. From the Constitution Review Committee, which is headed by a known, critic of government. And to be fair to him, he's been quite consistent in his criticism.
Yeah.
So, HKC Prempeh. So he does have some integrity. If you look at the Council of State and its representation, that includes a former, Chief Justice.
Yeah.
If you look at those other committees, the Educational Committee that was set up, the National Economic Dialogue Committee that is, set up, led by Dr. Ishmael Yamson, that is a reflection of where we want to go as an inclusive government. Even though some party people may not be happy with that. They may not be happy. And so sometimes the media must also help us. When you see these things, the pressures that are coming from within. So perhaps also highlight the value this inclusive nature would have for a party, because it's 4 years. And if we do the right things, we can perpetuate a renewed mandate, another renewed mandate. If the prophets are anything to go by, if we do the right thing, 16 years can easily be
so
for us.
that's what you need to say to your foot soldiers. So they should
with
allow you
the
to they should
other
allow you to
voices.
govern reasonably and not govern like NDC is the
And
only.
that does not mean that we will not create deliberately, intentionally opportunities that will also make them feel like their government is
Let's
in
talk
power.
about
It's a
let's talk
balance.
about a couple of big things.
Yes.
Girlfriend. So the public sector sacking has been quite controversial.
Yes.
The people appointed after December 7, the TUC have said they think this is not the right thing to do because some people had been processed. What's the response to this? Because it's like you are saying you want to create jobs, yet you are sacking people.
What I'm going to say is that a reset requires a reflection and a review of processes. A review of processes is not an end game. A review of processes would lead to a renewal of some processes to begin. So people should not be fearful at all, because we really need to do a lot of reassessment of some of the things that have gone. You know, this issue is not a current issue. It started during the transition period, when information was coming to us from within these institutions and agencies that there were unusual promotions happening. There were backdating of contracts happening from 6-month probation to 3 months. Even the payment of people for those backdated contracts that didn't actually work for the periods that their contracts had been backdated for. So we're getting all of these things, people being promoted quickly and above their grade, given their number of years of work in those institutions. We are not in government. What do? We issue a cautionary release, that please stop these things, because you yourself know that a couple of years ago, when similar actions were taken that were not even in the numbers that we were reporting, you spoke against those things and indicated, in fact, reversed a lot of those actions that were taken, which also transcended the periods before the elections. Okay, so if you must be consistent in what you expect. If that was the example that you wanted our governance to go, you should have been consistent. So as we have been speaking, we have not said we are sacking people without any recourse to further action. We are saying that we are reviewing all these cases, especially from 7th December. From 7th December, all those appointments and promotions will be reversed until a real assessment is done.
Okay.
If we require to reopen, and re-advertise for those positions, you only just need to reapply.
Okay.
And I can tell you that His Excellency's government is a fair and just government. Those who have qualified, who genuinely earned those spots, will re-earn those spots. But let me also add, those known political appointees, you see, this is an election that we have had, Bernard. It is a shift in power base. Let me repeat that. It must mean something. Those, political appointees who were even very active on social media, criticizing and campaigning for their party and the party's programs. Nobody in good conscience should tell you
your time is up,
resign and go. But many of them are still sitting pretty, hoping that they will be allowed to say, how do you want to work with a government that you do not share a philosophy with, number one? Two, that you actively use your platforms to campaign against? Why do you want to expect good behavior from a government when your example does not tally with that
but this has to
expected
be on
behavior?
a
That's not
case
fair.
by case, right?
Yes.
So if like I'm a chief director of a ministry who is not known to have done any politics, I hope my job will be secure because I'm serving the state.
Your job should be, and that, how many chief directors?
No, I'm just asking.
Yes.
I'm just so
There
you're saying
are
that
civil service positions that will not be touched. They will not
Okay.
be touched because many of them have worked through different governments. So you cannot come in unless you are a civil servant that did not, behave properly, and there's trail to show for the work that you did or how you did not behave
Now
properly.
we have a few minutes. The state of the nation, he's had only barely 50 days in office.
Yes.
So what is he going to report? Is it more the extent of the difficulty he's come to inherit, or I have actually done something in 50 days that I'm coming to talk, because 50 days is pretty short time, right? So
I'm happy you know that it's pretty short time
generally in a country's
report
life.
To report on results or impact.
Yeah.
So it's not impact that we are measuring now. It's input. So we are going to hear more of what inputs we are making thus far to ensure the reset. Okay. The economy is key on the agenda, and it cannot be an NPP economy or an NDC economy or a media economy. But what do the books say? And again, just to repeat that whatever we would hear today is not going to be different from what we know of the state of the economy, because we reported the economy, the media reported the economy, people felt the economy in their pockets. So His Excellency is not going to come and remind people of how the negative effects of the the economy from the past 8 years and even now has been. We will not be reminding Ghanaians of what pain they have been through. It's going to be perhaps we are giving life to the stories by communicating the data as we have come to see it, the statistics as we have come to see,
which is a bit different from what the previous government
some of
put
them
out.
Because government will always tell you the story that they want, Bernard. They will always tell you, but half of them are verifiable facts that
so there will clearly be a departure from the narrative of the former president, where he says he's living a robust economy, he's living $8 billion in reserves, and that the recovery is on. Amin has been saying this. The President Mahama will not. He
will give you a broader picture than that.
A different picture.
He will give you a broader picture than what was communicated. Because story, data can be used to tell a story. You can deliberately avoid some parts of the story, so the story can look, beautiful. So you would hear a fuller picture of the state of our economy. That will also precede the 11th March budget reading, which will now show you more comprehensively, because the president can't, tell you everything in.
So the budget will be more detailed on the economy.
Yes, the budget will be more.
So what else will he touch on in this State of the Nation?
It's also his commitment to the leadership that he wants to provide, because ultimately, like I said, the economy we all know, but what is the leadership that we want to shepherd us out of these doldrums? And is there integrity in that leadership? Is there tangible commitment in that leadership? Has the leadership shown some consistency and congruence with what he is expecting of the citizens as well as expecting of himself? And just Kojo was referring to how he's going to ensure that the people within his boat, the people who would be paddling this boat, would conform to the values of the administration, and how willing he will be to act when there is breach. I think that is also something we should expect and we should support, because leadership matters.
3 questions from me, and then I'll hand over back to Bernard. The first one is local, and then we'll go outside the borders a bit. So let's talk about Independence Day, which is coming up, and the presidency has indicated its intention to run a budget Independence Day celebration. There are those who say it's not just Independence Day celebrations are not just about the cost; they are symbols. It's a day of symbology or symbolism. What is the thinking behind that? Because it's easy to just throw, they was wasting a lot of money as a justification. But what is the sense of what the president wants to do with the Independence Day celebration coming up and this plan? And then 2, the president, I monitored the president's victory and the inauguration. Nigerians seem very happy with...
What do you mean? Nigerians seem happy as you won?
Yes. I just want to understand his relationship with Nigeria because of the roles the two countries
play. Yes, because Bola was his key...
the sub-region. As well. And then the third one, of course, a very unstable period in the sub-region. A lot of things happening recently. Burkina Faso, looking at food security, have said, look, we are not exporting cereals, and we know we rely on some of these things. What is the president's thinking around the ECOWAS situation and the AES, Alliance of Sahelian States, who have moved away. What does he think?
Right. I mean, quickly starting with your last question first. The president was in Ethiopia for the AU conference, and he was also before that in Brussels for a security conference that he even chaired a session on. The speeches he gave and the comments he gave in those places was to serve as a wake-up call to Africa to ensure that we look within, because it doesn't seem that we can continue to rely on the West, for solutions to our problems. So I think that in terms of our foreign diplomacy, his leadership within the sub-region is actually going to help, which is one of the reasons why Ibrahim Traore was invited to our independence celebration, because he believed really in building bridges, not breaking bridges, especially with your neighboring countries. So he's not going to sit somewhere and go to gossip about his neighbors. His neighbors are around. If there are anything that require to be spoken about, I think His Excellency is the best president for Ghana now to stretch olive branches and ensure that, and he's working on that. The special envoy on the Sahel region is former National Security Coordinator Bevlolate. He's already hard at work, and we need to be at peace with our neighbors, and we need to be able to strengthen that bond of friendship that would also ultimately help us. On the issue of Nigeria and their love for Ghana, there's a love-hate relationship between Ghana and Nigeria, but I think that ultimately it's all about the love. His Excellency, again,
there were a lot of Nigerian dignitaries. It wasn't just the political elite.
But he always tells a story of his stepmother being Nigerian, right? Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he's told that story as well. So he's been in Nigeria. I think he spent some time in Nigeria also. So there's that link as well. Okay. And also because he was a former president before, he's a known entity within the Committee of Nations, and he has quite a lot of respect amongst his peers, again, because of his leadership, his humility, his respect to his colleagues. The last one, Independence Day celebration, we are not cancelling it, and I think that if you follow the social media campaign that we're doing, there's a lot of engagements happening around the commemoration of the 28th February Crossroads shootings. From next week, we will also be highlighting some of the significant activities we will be engaging in ahead of the commemorative event. I told you that we have a presidency that wants to bring the citizens to it. So this year's event is being done at the forecourt of Jubilee House, and we are bringing a cross section of Ghanaians, some who have never been to that place before, to have a feel. School children will come to the presidency and have a feel. He wants to demystify the presidency and show that the presidency is about service to the people. And you're right about the significance of such national celebrations. We can never discount that. And so, like yesterday, there was a conversation about the evolution on Twitter. It was at the instance of the communications at the presidency that we should create new platforms for young people to connect with the Independence Day celebration. There's a very huge disconnect. So we're doing a lot of social media engagements. We are telling the story of 28 February 1948 via visuals on social media about the 200 ex-servicemen, what they did, how they laid down their life, and whether today we would do that, we'll make similar sacrifices. And the general evolution of civic protest, how has it changed? Yesterday we had that Twitter space conversation where young people, Kwesi Pratt was there giving us the history of protest in Ghana. Angela Dwamina was on, Mary Ada was on, Oliver was on that Twitter space, and the young people on that, they were out, but the history that they didn't know. So I think that innovatively there are ways in which we can create alternative platforms that actually become meaningful to connecting the youth of Ghana to their history, than expending huge amounts of money to go and do a one-day event at an international conference center. Of course, when things get better, if we think we should still do that, but I think the jury is that that many hours of young people standing in the sun is of no
Caleb, read a few comments. I know you have to get to Parliament before 9:30, so Caleb, read a few comments And then we see.
So, Kwesif Aqua from Sakumono is asking if the president will continue with the pension of the previous government, speaking to foreign media and not availing himself for interviews with local media houses.
He won't.
Right.
No, he won't.
So he'll do local media interviews?
Oh, he will.
He will. Okay.
Regularly.
Hope so.
But
You know, he is the
We are telling you
centralized
to
government
make sure
communication.
it is local.
Yeah, but symbolically, the man who he talks to is important, sends a message, right?
Yeah.
And so if you want us to consume local food, you should also use your own local media to speak to your
communicate
people. You don't always go to Bloomberg or CNN or wherever
He will.
to speak to the French and the Nigerians
This
or
is
wherever.
the man who spoke to you people when he was in opposition. Why do you think he will speak to you
Ah,
that
so
night?
we are just hoping.
telling you.
We are just hoping.
We are telling you.
So you continue. Khaled.
Right. So, Bernard, I agree with Shamima. I only cite the Cocoa Board head office as an example. People were promoted far above their qualifications and performance. I know people who have worked diligently for over 30 years, more than qualified, and had been marginalized, suppressed in the name of being branded as NDC. The sad fact is that some of them are so non-aligned when it comes to politics. Government must seriously investigate Cocoa Board promotion policy. They have deviated completely, and it's a job for the boys and girls. No wonder in the past 8 years the industry has performed abysmally, you say.
Okay.
There are
More comments.
messages
Bernard, there were some military promotions that took place after 7 December. Some people were promoted to generals without due process. Is government going to review that as well? I don't know if this has come to your attention. There are two questions. One about Cocoa Board promotions happened after December 7. Somebody is also pointing out that there were military promotions, even to very high levels, without due process. Is the government going to consider reviewing all of those too?
I'm sure that those with a mandate to speak to those and give the necessary advice will do so.
All right. So just to finally go through the theme for the Independence Day, the whole reset, review, what are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to say with that theme?
We had a lot of comments that the mandate that was given to the NDC and His Excellency John Mahama was like Ghana's second independence. We know that in Ghana's first independence there was a revival and a renewed spirit of the Ghanaian, and there was a lot of hope in the period, and a lot of positive nationalism where people really wanted this country to work, and Nkrumah was on a 7-year development plan that saw massive infrastructural projects coming up around that time. We want to reflect that era of renewed nationalism, because we do know that the pessimism in the system is quite a lot. When you speak to the average Ghanaian, they seem to have lost hope. And you reflected on your everyday program that there seems to be this despondency about the prospects of our nation, and that we don't seem to be going anywhere. And yet this is the country that we have, right? And if you compare us to other countries that were able to change their nations in a generation or two, we must ask ourselves, why not? And I like what you said earlier about the commitment of the citizens to the change that they call for, because leadership can only do that much. If the right values are not imbued and reflected by the citizens of hard work, of integrity, of love for country, because words are powerful. God created the universe through words. And so if we continue to be very negative about our nation and we send negative commentary about our nation, I think the nation will continue to be where it is. If we truly say we want a reset, because that is the message we gave to Ghanaians, and the mandate that we received tells us that there is a sense that Ghanaians also want a renewed direction. But that renewed direction is not going to be done by only your leaders or only the president. It will have to be done by all of us. And that's why we keep saying building the Ghana we want together. We must do it together, or we will not reap the results that we want. And to do that, we should reflect on how far we have come. And we should be able to speak truth to ourselves and speak truth to power, to find out the gaps in our leadership, the gaps in our values that has brought us where we are, where as we should be progressing. It seems every sector of our economy is rather, retrogressing. So we want that conversation around reflection, which you do on a daily basis. But as we reflect, we also now to review. So what should we do do? What should we do? That's the big question in the room. I wanted to say elephant, but I forgot the elephant, took a trip to Bode National Park. So I guess
don't do that.
What should
so
we do?
We review before we reset.
And then we reset.
Incredible
so
stuff.
The system should work, the structures should be in place, and the love for country should drive everything that we do, so that if you are at a government office and there's work on your table, please get it done. Do not let the turnaround time to service, delivery in all of these agencies be so long because you want somebody to give you money. Remember that Ghana would work if you make it work. The leadership is committed. There is a sense of direction. Please come on board as we reflect, review, and reset our country, and that is the focus of this year's independence.
A few final comments for you. I miss this voice way back on Eyewitness News. Go hire Shamima. Bernard, please ask Shamima if the president intends to bring back the Meet the Press series. This is the Are you cool?
I'm sure we will.
Hopefully he brings that as well. So Shamima,
Bernard, just quickly to also announce that tomorrow at the Nationalism Park we'll be laying a wreath. The Vice President will be there to commemorate and to remember our heroes, the falling.
The Crossroads shooting, 28th February.
Please do something about it. Talk.
So is that your main activity for so there's 28th February?
And then next week, the finals of the schools debate will happen in Accra at the Nat Hall. And then the national quiz competition will also happen on the 5th.
What do you know?
Yes, what do you know? Around the same team, the debate.
No, I was on the debate team.
You on the debate
with
team?
With Kojo back in the day.
Hey.
He was also a debater for Lagos.
Oh wow!
So there's the 28th Crossroads Memorial.
And then
there's
on Monday.
What do you know?
Monday and Tuesday is the National Economic Forum, 3rd and 4th.
Economic dialogue.
Then, economic dialogue. And then the schools debate comes on the 3rd, then the quiz on the 4th, and then on the 5th is the Presidential Award for School Children.
Okay.
So children are still at the heart of
the celebration. And all that's a build up to the 6th.
To the 6th.
Which is the Independence Day, the budget edition.
Yes, the budget edition at the forecourts of the Jubilee House, where there will be performances across sections.
So no regional matches, match pass.
No regional, but there will be districts. So all the
districts,
the regional ministers are to ensure that all districts commemorate the day with their own activities.
Okay. So it looks like after the State of the Nation and the independence, then the honeymoon is also over.
It's
in
over.
a way, because you've enjoyed the honeymoon as a government. I think now people.
But the love begins, please. The love begins.
Well, love is an action. So we hope to see.
It's a verb. It's not a noun.
It's reciprocal.
Yes.
But we wish you well, Shamima. We really wish you well. You've made all of us proud with the way you've sort of moved in, ably performing, and we pray that it goes well.
Thank you.
And as you know, we will ask you the hard questions.
I know you will.
And we'll always be fair and objective. Shamima Muslim is the deputy presidential spokesperson rushing to parliament before the president.
Something I noticed.
What?
Shamima carried her own bag here.
Oh, of course.
So she should tell her other people that they should carry their own bags.
Police people should not be carrying bags.
They should always carry their bags.
Yes.
Do you know there's this forceful nature?
They want to take your bag.
Everywhere.
I want to open your door.
It's not everywhere.
It's called big manism.
Sometimes you feel like you're being rude.
No, I want to carry my own bag. I want to carry my own
So
bag.
when you finish, is expecting
something.
That's what they're like. Yeah, honorable.
Keep carrying.
I'm just started calling you honorable too.
I beg.